You're listening to The Vanishing Point on Soul Sound. Chapter 3. Distraction. The door closed, a soft click. It carried the weight of finality. Verity stood at attention, her spine straight, her gaze fixed on a point just above the High Counselor's shoulder. The room was wrong, too warm, too still. The air felt observed, as if the walls recorded her every breath for later analysis. The silence had texture, a watchful quality. It made her want to check her pulse, her posture, the steadiness of her hands. She had not slept, not truly. Her eyes burned with the strain of yesterday's vigil, gritty and overbright. But she kept her gaze pinned to practical details. The door seam, the edge of Maren's desk, the way dust motes hung suspended in shafts of amber light. She pinned the world into place, because that was what she did. That was who she had become. On the wall behind Maren's desk, a map of the blind spot hung like a wound. Someone had added red marks at the edges, not cartographic notations, something more visceral. They looked like scratches, like bleeding. Verity kept the map in her peripheral vision. When she looked directly at it, the red ink seemed to pulse faintly, like a heartbeat beneath skin. When she looked away, it went still. The magic of the blind spot was bleeding into the tools used to track it. She cataloged the room's exits automatically. 2 doors, 1 window too narrow for escape. She thought of Silas flickering at the boundary, waiting for her. If she blinked now, in this suffocating warmth, would he feel it? Would the thread between them stretch thin enough to snap? Her skin prickled. Her heartbeat sounded too loud in her ears, a drumbeat of anxiety she couldn't silence.
You're performing admirably, Verity. The council is pleased.
Verity's silence became her only shield. She said nothing, letting the words hang in the air until their shape revealed the hook hidden inside. Pleased meant they wanted something. Pleased meant they had noticed. Pleased meant the leash was about to tighten. She forced her breathing steady, drawing air through her nose in slow, controlled sips. Maren noticed everything. The slight tremor in a hand, the hesitation before answering, the pulse at the throat.
The blind spot is not a person, Verity. It's a disease in the fabric of our attention. Compassion for it is weakness.
Verity felt the weight of the accusation without its form. Maren knew. She knew about Silas, about the dawn visits, about the counting. This wasn't a lesson, it was a test, and Verity was failing it in real time. The red ink on the map pulsed harder when Verity's focus wavered toward her fear. The magic responded to her attention, or perhaps her attention was becoming too thin, too strained, too stretched across too many lies.
I understand the protocol, Counselor.
Inside her mind, where Maren couldn't read, I understand you want me to stop seeing him. I understand this is a threat disguised as guidance. I understand that survival means pretending to agree. Maren smiled. The expression was thin and knowing, the smile of someone who had played this game 100 times before.
Do you? Then prove it. Stricter rotations, written reports on every observation, and 2 assistants to ensure your focus never wavers.
Verity felt the walls close in. Not metaphor. The room seemed smaller, the air thicker, the warmth pressing against her skin like a physical weight. 2 assistants, not support, surveillance. They would document her every lapse, record her every blank, time her every hesitation. And when she failed, and she would fail, because she was human, because she was exhausted, because she was in love, they would use it to erase him. 3 seconds of silence. Verity's throat tightened. Maren waited, patient as a spider in a web of her own weaving. The red ink pulsed in the corner of Verity's vision, marking time like a second heartbeat. Verity inclined her head 1 millimeter. Not agreement, survival. She stood. The meeting was over. She didn't look at the map again, didn't let her gaze linger on the red marks that might be Silas's boundaries. If she saw him in her mind, let Maren try to read that. The air felt lighter near the door, where observation faded and she could breathe again.
We correct failures, Verity. Remember that.
In the corridor, Verity leaned against cold stone and counted her breaths. 1, 2, 3. The stone was cool against her back, a relief after the oppressive warmth of Maren's chambers. At the end of the hall, one assistant stood, pretending not to watch. He was young, nervous, knew enough to still believe he was invisible when he stood still. Verity had never felt more alone in her life and more determined. Footsteps approached, not the assistant's heavier tread, lighter, older, familiar.
You're not the first to receive their assistance.
Thane stepped from a side passage, his face lined with understanding that needed no explanation. In his palm, an old key caught the corridor's dim light, a scratch pattern she recognized from somewhere, some training, some secret knowledge shared in whispers. He didn't touch her, offered only the key, palm up, waiting for her choice.
I can't. Not yet.
Inside her mind, if I run now, they win. They erase him. I need time. I need to reach him first. I need to warn him, to plan, to... The key seemed to hum with potential in Thane's palm, a threshold waiting, a promise of escape when she was ready. Thane nodded, not disappointed, understanding. He had done this before, she realized, helped others escape. How many had made it? How many had hesitated too long?
The safe house remains when you're ready. No questions asked, Verity. Only safety.
Verity's voice softened further, nearly broken. The gratitude was a physical weight in her chest.
Thank you.
5 seconds. They stood in the half-dark of the stairwell, two people who understood each other without needing to explain. The assistant cleared his throat at the corridor's end, a reminder that they were still watched, still timed, still trapped in the system. Thane squeezed Verity's shoulder once, a gesture of solidarity that lasted exactly as long as propriety allowed. Then he faded into shadow, leaving her with the knowledge that escape was possible, that someone had prepared for this moment, that she wasn't as alone as Maren wanted her to believe. The key was a promise she carried without touching. Verity straightened. She had an appointment at the boundary, and she would not be late. The boundary corridor felt different at midday. The light was harsh, unforgiving, stripping shadows of their mystery and revealing every crack in the stone. The sun's rays fell in solid columns through high windows, casting bars of gold across the dusty floor. They seemed too substantial, too certain, too aggressively real. Verity walked with her focus already split, part on the path ahead, part on the surveillance she knew was watching, part on the man who waited for her at the edge of dissolution. The knowledge of being monitored made her skin itch, made her pulse throb behind her eyes with new intensity. She found him closer to the threshold than ever before, close enough that she could see the individual threads of his coat, the slight tremor in his hands, the desperate hope in his eyes. Close enough that the intimacy of proximity made her chest ache with protective ferocity. He was watching her approach, his form held steady at the center of her vision, but at the periphery, when her attention wavered even for a heartbeat, she saw the micro-flickers, a stutter in his jawline, a blur at the edge of his shoulder. The instability made visible. The air between them felt charged, like the moment before lightning, when the world holds its breath and the hair stands up on your arms. This space was sacred now, contaminated by their meetings. The void beyond the boundary seemed less empty when Silas stood near it, like it recognized him, like it was reaching for its own.
You came, despite everything.
Verity stepped closer. The boundary air prickled her skin, cold and electric. She could feel the void reaching toward them, hungry and patient.
I don't have a choice anymore. I need to see you. I need...
She didn't finish. The words hung between them, heavy and true. They both knew what she needed, what she was admitting, the dependence that Maren had warned her against, the weakness the council would correct. She was choosing it anyway. Then the trap sprang. A lantern dropped at the corridor's far end. Glass shattered against stone in a crash that was too loud, too perfectly timed. The sound was engineered to demand witness, to pull at the social reflex, the instinct to turn toward disruption. Verity's gaze jerked toward the noise before her will could catch it. In the edge of her vision, she saw Silas's shoulder fuzz into static. 1 heartbeat, then 2, then 3. The distraction fractured his solidity immediately, violently, as if the connection between them was a thread that could be severed by a moment's inattention. She forced her eyes back to him, locking onto the dark centers of his eyes with desperate intensity. But the assault continued. A voice called her title from the shadows, urgent, official sounding. Observer Ashcroft, emergency. The social reflex nearly won. Her head started to turn before her will could catch it. Authority aimed at her trained instincts, demanding response. Silas wavered, his form stuttering like a failing light, his edges blurred into the void behind him, becoming one with the unbeing that hungered for him. Third distraction, a deliberate stumble at the edge of her vision, a body falling, the kind of motion that demanded witness, that screamed for help, that pulled at the very core of human attention with the gravity of potential tragedy. Verity's peripheral attention screamed to turn. Her training as an anchor warred with her instincts as a person, help the fallen, respond to authority, investigate the noise. Silas started to fade at the edges. The void pulled at him like a current, hungry and patient. Her focus was the only dam holding back his dissolution.
Don't look away. Please. I can feel myself drifting.
Verity's hands clenched. She held him with her eyes, like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. She wouldn't let him go. She couldn't. She stepped closer to Silas, close enough to feel his breath ghosting against her cheek, putting herself between him and the void. Her eyes burned. She didn't blink.
I won't. I promise.
Inside her mind, a war cry. Whoever you are, whatever you want, you can't have him. He's mine to watch, mine. Her attention seemed to solidify the air around him, reality responding to her will, her desperate refusal to let him go. The shimmer was visible now, a barrier of focus that kept him whole. Footsteps approached, urgent. She ignored them, let them come, let them see what she would do to keep him real.
You don't have to. I'm not worth.
Verity cut him off with a look. With proximity, with her hand finding his, she pressed her forehead to his. 1 heartbeat. 2. The agents were almost on them. She didn't care. Touch as observation, skin as anchor. The physical contact reinforced her visual focus. Silas snapped back into solidity, gasping as if he'd been drowning and suddenly found air. The boundary rippled where they touched, 2 forms of attention reinforcing each other, creating a resonance that the void couldn't penetrate. The agents stopped, watching. They'd failed this test, but there would be others. The agents withdrew. The lures vanished as if they had never been there. The corridor fell silent. Message delivered. The council was watching, testing, waiting for failure. They would not attack with force. They would attack with distraction, with engineered neglect, with the simple, terrible power of making people look away. Silas held. Trembling but present, he didn't flicker now. Her fierce attention had welded him in place. After, the silence was too loud. 4 seconds. The agents retreated. Mission failed for now. Silas breathed against Verity's skin, his warmth proof that he was still real. She hadn't blinked in 40 seconds. Her eyes streamed. Worth it. Silas pulled back just enough to see her face. His hand stayed in hers.
Being forgotten while still alive. That's what I'm afraid of. Not death. Unbeing.
Verity understood. She'd felt it. The moment he started to fray, the terrifying fragility of his existence when her attention wavered.
I won't let them. We're moving you, today.
The boundary seemed to pulse in agreement, or warning. They had hours, maybe less, before the council tried again. Silas stared at her. Shock, then something like hope, fragile as glass, rising in his eyes. He squeezed her hand. No words needed. Verity led him away from the boundary. For the first time, he was walking toward the city, not away from it. The city breathed around them. Every footstep was a threat. Every passerby was a potential attention snare, someone who might look at Silas and unmake him by noticing he didn't belong. Verity kept him pressed to her side, her arm linked through his, her grip tight enough to be a promise. The weight of too many eyes pressed against her skin like a physical force. The smell of street vendor smoke filled her nostrils, ordinary and obscene in its normalcy. Silas's arm was solid and real against hers, her anchor as much as she was his. Silas matched her pace. He didn't ask where they were going. Trust without maps, trust built in the boundary shadow. The rhythm of their steps created a counter-rhythm to the city's heartbeat, 2 people moving as one through the hostile attention field. They moved through streets she had walked 1,000 times before, but now every corner was a threat, every shadow a potential council trap. The familiar cobblestones felt different under her boots, harder, more unforgiving. The buildings seemed to lean inward, their windows like watching eyes. Verity narrated the city into certainty, stone by stone, shadow by shadow. She named the architecture aloud, describing corners and cobbles, making the world solid through her attention so it wouldn't dissolve around them.
Red brick, 3 windows, diamond panes, cobblestones worn smooth in the center.
The texture of brick, the pattern of window light, the rhythm of her own breathing creating rhythm for them both, controlled focus masking desperate fear. A child ran past, laughing. Verity's head almost turned. Instinct. She caught herself, locking her gaze forward, locking Silas in the center of her vision.
You're burning. I can feel it. Your attention. It's like holding the sun.
Verity didn't answer with words. She tightened her grip on his arm. A merchant called out, "Fresh bread!" And Verity felt the pull on her peripheral attention. She countered by describing the merchant's cart to Silas, making the distraction part of her narrative, claimed and controlled.
Wooden cart, green awning, loaves stacked in pyramids.
The merchant's voice faded into the background of her focus, no longer dangerous. Silas watched her work, learning how she built reality one observation at a time.
How do you do it? Hold so much.
Verity's answer was stripped bare, not romantic, existential.
Because I've been alone my whole life. Because watching is all I know. Because now I have something worth watching for.
Silas absorbed this. He didn't pity her. He recognized her. 2 people who had learned to exist in isolation, finding each other. A council watcher stepped from an alley, a young woman Verity had trained with. Their eyes met. The watcher frowned, looking past Verity to the space beside her. She couldn't quite see Silas, but she sensed wrongness. Silas flickered, becoming translucent at the edges where the watcher's gaze brushed him. Verity smiled, her professional smile, the one she used for Maren, the smile that meant nothing and revealed nothing.
Late patrol?
She lied, smooth as silk. The council's own weapons turned against them.
I'm escorting a new recruit to the Eastern Quarter. Council business.
The watcher hesitated, then nodded. She didn't want to challenge a senior anchor. 3 seconds of silence. The watcher passed. Silas held his breath. Literally, Verity realized. He'd learned to minimize his presence in the world. She was teaching him to expand it. The contradiction made her want to weep and laugh. Silas exhaled. Verity steadied him with her shoulder.
You're good at lying. I find that both comforting and frightening.
Verity didn't answer. They turned a corner, the safe house street, the key-marked door. No sign, no number, just a faint scratch in the stone that matched the pattern Thane had shown her. Verity guided Silas to it, her focus never breaking even as relief flooded her chest. She fumbled the key. Her hands were shaking now that they could.
Let me.
He took the key from her trembling fingers. His hand was steady. The power dynamic shifted. He was becoming capable of support, not just survival. The key turned. The door opened on darkness that felt safe. Inside, silence. Real silence, not the watchful quiet of the streets. Dust motes in a beam of light, the smell of old books and closed windows, a space that hadn't been observed in years. The air was still, no pulsing red ink, no watchful shadows, just space. They stood in the doorway, unwilling to break the spell by moving.
Rules. We need rules. Consent first, warning before looking away, rotations.
She was building a partnership, intentional, chosen, the captivity of the boundary replaced by the choice of the safe house.
Mutual anchoring, not captivity.
The safe house room was small, a narrow bed, a chair, a window covered by heavy cloth that kept the outside world at bay. Verity sat on the floor. She didn't trust the softness of furniture yet, didn't trust anything that felt like comfort when danger still hunted them. Her back against the wall, the floor was cold stone, grounding her. Her muscles ached from sustained focus, from hours of holding reality together by force of will. The air smelled of dust and safety. Silas hovered, uncertain of his permission to exist in this space. Then he sat across from her, not close enough to touch, respecting her space.
You can rest. I'll try to hold myself. Practice what you've shown me.
Verity looked at him. Really looked, now that they had the safety to do so. She studied him. Features she couldn't examine at the boundary, the small scar above his eyebrow, the way his hair fell, how his hands were long and nervous. He was real. She'd been holding reality, and now she saw what it looked like. She tested herself, looked away at the wall, counted to 3, looked back. 1 second, 2, 3. Silas stayed, flickered slightly, but held. When she returned her gaze, he was grinning, relief and triumph, the first proof that their connection had changed the physics. He was learning to exist independently of her constant gaze. Verity blinked deliberately. He stayed. She blinked again. Laughter bubbled up, hysterical, exhausted, grateful. It worked. The trust, the training, the desperate focus, it had changed something fundamental. The boundaries rules didn't apply here. Her blinks didn't unmake him anymore. The air between them seemed to settle, like water finding its level.
It worked. You stayed.
You taught me how.
Verity's laughter faded. The exhaustion hit now that she'd stopped moving, now that she could let go. The adrenaline drained, leaving her limp and exposed. She slid down the wall until she was lying on the floor, too tired for dignity. Her eyes closed. She couldn't keep them open, didn't want to. For the first time in days, she felt safe enough to be vulnerable. Silas moved closer, not touching, just positioning himself where she could find him when she opened her eyes. 5 seconds. Verity's breathing deepened, the sound rhythmic and slow, anchoring him as surely as his presence anchored her. Short pause. Silas watched her face, features softening in sleep, the tension lines around her mouth relaxing, the small crease between her eyebrows smoothing out. He'd never seen her at rest. It was a gift he wasn't sure he deserved. Verity's eyes fluttered, not waking, adjusting. She mumbled something unintelligible. Silas watched. He thought about his life in the blind spot, years of flickering existence, moments of clarity when someone looked at him, the slow forgetting of his own solidity, years of becoming less real with each passing day until he could barely remember what it felt like to cast a shadow. He wouldn't go back. He couldn't. Not now that he'd been truly seen. Not now that someone had chosen to hold him in existence. Not out of duty or protocol, but out of something that felt dangerously like care. The sound of her breathing filled the small room, a steady rhythm that anchored him more surely than any gaze. The way light fell on her face through the cloth-covered window, dust motes dancing in the beam. The certainty of his own hands, still visible, still real, still warm. Gratitude hardened into resolve. He would learn to be solid for her. He would become the anchor she needed. He would not let her down.
I would hold the world for you. If you asked. If you needed.
Verity's eyes opened. She heard. She didn't let on.
I can't go back. To the council. To Maren's leash. I thought I was made to hold the world together. I didn't expect to want one person more.
Silas didn't celebrate. He absorbed this like the gravity it was. He offered his hand, palm up, no grab, no assumption, just the offer. He waited. Verity looked at his hand, looked at his face, took it.
We'll run. Together. When you're ready.
Verity squeezed his hand. Agreement. More than agreement. Commitment. Partnership written in the language of touch, in the grammar of shared survival. 4 seconds. They sat on the floor, holding hands, watching each other. The room was quiet. The city was outside, with all its dangers and its watching eyes. For now, they were safe. For now, they were enough. 2 people who had learned to see each other in a world that had forgotten how. Verity tested one more blink, a deliberate closing of her eyes, a small surrender of control, a gift of trust. When she finally let herself blink, she counted 1, 2, 3, and opened her eyes. He was still there, solid, real, hers. He always would be. Download Soul Sound on App Store to listen to the full The Vanishing Point and hundreds of other Romantasy stories.